There we go. Man, this thing's got some serious attitude. Ooh, it's a big walleye. All right, guys, welcome back to another video. We are going to be talking all about catching walleyes in the month of May. Oh yeah, that's a nice one. Here we go. So what I like about May, let's bring this guy over here so you guys don't get a look at the back of my head. All right, May walleye fishing. So I'm getting prepped for May. But one thing I do love about May is a lot of the patterns that you're seeing in April are gonna hold. So look at this beauty. That's a nice long-bodied Walter. We better get her back. All right, so the way these fish set up, first things first, when you're talking about any month of the year, the first part of the equation is just gonna be location. So for me, what's cool about May is you have a lot of those hardcore spring patterns. So you have these fish where the spawn is definitely behind them. They're putting on the feed bag. You know, May is the month where walleye opener is happening in the state of Minnesota, and the walleye seasons are opening up in other places as well. But it's just the time of year when the fish are for sure done with the spawn, and they're basically feeding up like crazy, and this is when you're gonna find a lot of really good bites. So for me, when we're talking about May, a big thing is gonna be water temperature. So you're gonna see big water temperature fluctuations over the course of a day. A lot of times in spring, early in the year like this, you could see water temperatures move, 2, 3, 4 degrees in a day. And for me, a lot of times what I'm doing is chasing some of that warmer water specifically. And the reason for that is just those fish that are gonna be in that warmer water are generally gonna be a little bit more aggressive. And that's just gonna be the name of the game this time of year, where you're gonna be running into some fish that are lethargic, some fish that are aggressive. This is the time of year when you could catch them on jerk baits. You could catch them on swim baits, but oftentimes when you're playing with this colder water temperatures, sometimes you got to slow down and you got to use live bait presentations. So on the topic of baits, this last one came for me on a jig and crawler. And here's the crazy thing, a lot of people think of that as a summer presentation, but ultimately at the end of the day, that exact presentation is going to catch fish for me basically every single month of the year, and May is no exception. But from there, jig and minnow is going to be a big one. Jig or just like a hair jig with a stinger hook on the back is going to be a big one. You got casting rigs, so basically like casting split shot rigs is another thing. Something that some people aren't busting out yet, and they're more waiting for summer, is bobbers. Bobbers can be really, really effective as well this time of year. But spring for me, jig and a plastic minnow, that's another one, where you have like an 1/8 ounce jig. I'll use like a tungsten jig or a DP jig, and then I'll have like a 4-inch, eye candy minnow on there would be kind of a go-to, and I can kind of pop that around the weeds. But speaking of weeds, we can transition out of some of the presentation stuff into just sort of some of the things I'm looking for. So personally for me, I like to look for fish up on these feeding flats. A lot of times that's just, kind of the big flat areas that are connected to the shorelines. Ideally, if you know where these fish spawn, areas that are basically in the month of May, you're looking for areas that are in between where the fish spawned and where they're going to be summering. So if you know the points and whatnot where they're gonna be at in the summer, look for the flats, the interesting little structural transitions between those two areas specifically. That could be a big sand flat. It might be a gravel bar. Oftentimes on a lot of the lakes that I'll fish, some of like the stocked walleye lakes, that might be, you know, just some weeds that are left over from the season before. So any kind of cover like that, whether it's rocks or weeds, can be really critical. But you know, on sometimes like we'll go out on places like Mille Lacs or something like that, and a lot of times those fish are related to rocks or they're up on the sand. And honestly, for me, right now where I'm fishing, there's a lot of sand, and sand is super awesome because it is extremely easy to see those fish on side imaging. The next thing we kind of got to cover down on is just how you go about searching for these fish. So for me, what I like to do is I like to get behind the helm and I like to scan until I see a big pot of walleyes on side imaging. So if you are fishing sand, I mean, that's a big benefit, right? I'll take the boat and I'll run it, I'll zigzag it around on a big sand flat, or I may, you know, go up right on the side where I think the weed line is going to be, and I'm going to be looking for those little tiny white grains of sand. So that's going to be the first thing that I do. But you know, smaller spots, sometimes I'll drive up to them, not all the way up on top of them, you know, but I'll drive up, you know, to the edge of them, and I'll actually just drop the trolling motor down and start looking around with forward-facing sonar. And, you know, instead of blowing those spots up that are smaller, you know, the higher percentage spots where you know where those fish like to hold, sometimes I'll set up off of those spots a little bit and just work my way onto it with the trolling motor so I'm not spooking those fish with the big motor. That is one thing that is absolutely a factor is, you know, you'll see like when you are scanning with like 2D sonar, you'll see all these fish down on the bottom. But if you look out in front of you with forward-facing sonar while you're scanning, you'll see those fish are suspended up higher, you know, maybe halfway down. I'm just talking generally, maybe not in May specifically. But by the time you drive over them and you mark them on the 2D sonar in the back of your boat, those fish are down on the bottom. So I guess what I'm getting at is, this is a long way of saying, the boat does displace the fish. So if you have the opportunity to go up and sneak your way up onto the spot and start casting onto those fish before, you know, just running up and marking them with your boat or whatever, do that. But if it is a larger spot, you are 100% going to do a lot better if you drive around and you mark those fish. Like right, the spot, place that we're fishing right now, it's like unlimited sand. So, I mean, it's just miles and miles. So if you're not if you're not driving around and marking those fish with side imaging before you start chasing them, then you're obviously going to have a hard time. So that would be a quick rundown on May, a little bit of tips here and there. Obviously, May is just around the corner. It's going to be here in a couple days. I'm super excited for so many reasons. I just love this time of year because the water temperature is a little bit higher than it was in April, a decent amount higher. So you got these fish that are going to be really active. You have the Minnesota walleye opener happening, which I live in Minnesota, so that's a big deal for me. But a lot of these lakes in Wisconsin and Michigan and kind of all over the place are setting up really similar to how our lakes are setting up. So it's just a really fun time of the year. And honestly, you could make the argument, I don't know if it's my favorite month of the year for walleyes, but you could make the argument that walleye fishing in the month of May is potentially the best month of the whole season. You know, a lot of people have the most success this time of year because the fish are up shallow, the fish are somewhat active, you know, and a lot of people start to struggle once we get into the summer months. So this is kind of the golden hour for walleyes here. May is a lot of fun, and hopefully you got a few tips that'll help you put a few more walleyes in the boat in the month of May. And best of luck this upcoming month.